what I'm going to show you now is how to make a margined Re-Teak caulked panel. We've already shown you how to make a sheet such as this. Now I have my template underneath and I'm going to make a margin to go all the way around. We need to make our panel just a couple of centimetres shorter than the finished required size will be. So we can then add the margins somewhat in this fashion to create the correct size. Now, as I mentioned before, you take the standard Re-Teak extrusion and we need to cut the black lines off the side using a Stanley knife and a straight edge. So using the Stanley knife and a straight edge, just trim the black off the sides. Cut it off on both sides. So we cut the black line all the way off. And what we have are our pieces now with no black line on, ready for the margin. And we can now position these on top of our panel, making the outside edge flush with the outside edge of our template. Now what we have now is a line here, which if we take a pen, we can mark the inside edge of our margin on our panel, and we need to do the same thing for all four sides. Leave that one there, next piece on here. So we do the same thing all the way around. Now we can see that we've marked the margin distance off onto the field all the way round. So the margin is going to be attached onto the main body of the panel like that, but we're using this connector strip. At this stage we need to cut ourselves about 1 inch of it off, cut one edge totally off, one of the little flat wings off, and then you can see now we need to add the thickness of the raised spacer section to all the way round. So basically we need to shrink the size of that line and make the panel 3 mm, which is the thickness of the spacer head, 3 mm smaller all the way around. So when we actually come to connect the margin on, there's a 3 mm spacer that goes between them onto the board. So we've marked the 3 mm off, basically draw a new line all the way around, all four edges. Once you've done that, that's the line we need to cut to, the smaller of the two lines. So we cut all four corners off, all four edges off to match. Let's cut the final side now. Don't be tempted to cut through in a single stroke. You hold your straight edge still. Several passes can be used to greater effect, because the knife doesn't tend to wander, then it will stay more or less where you want it. So now we've cut out the sheet. We reintroduce our template. Put it back onto it's centered nicely. And what we will have is an equal margin now all the way around the outside for us to attach our margin strip to. So there will be a 3mm gap all the way around where we shall infill with a connecting strip. We need to cut our connecting strip just marginally over size. And using the cold weld adhesive, we shall stick it onto the edge. So apply it on one side only, quite liberally. Slide the connector on. Push it up nice and tight. Just hold it there for a few seconds and allow the adhesive to go off. Then we'll repeat the same thing all the way around. Into the last strip here. Just incidentally, it's a good idea just to have a cloth or something, a bit of waste material to rest the cold weld on, because it tends to ooze a bit after you've finished squeezing it. So that just collects it all and keeps things a little bit tidy. Should you get any on the panel, just wait a couple of seconds and then just rub it off with your finger. Find that it should just ball off. Right, so there is the panel with the connecting strip now attached to all four sides. The next stage is now to add the margins. You can start on whatever side you want. And again, the first bit, simply apply some of the cold weld down the first edge. And stick the margin board to it. A little bit of weight is handy at this stage just to hold them in place for just a minute or so whilst the cold weld takes effect. Once we've stuck two of the edges in, two opposite edges, it will be now time to add the long border. Place it in position and just put a little weight in the middle to hold it for you. And what we need to do now is prepare the miters on both sides. Now these are done by basically just joining where the inside and outside edges meet. Put a straight edge across. And taking your pen or pencil, just draw a line there. And then we cut with our knife along that line. You could use a pair of shears, but I personally prefer to use a knife. Several even strokes are better than trying to force it through with one cut. Open up the cut. Draw the knife through. Lay it back in position just to make sure it's correct. So the inside and outside edges should match. And taking your pen again, draw a line, cut that. And what you get is should get a nice tight fitting mitre. there we are. Now we're going to have to caulk this, so yet again it needs to have the 3mm spacer. So what we need to do is back both of these cuts off by half the width of the jointing connector, which is 1.5mm. So once you've ensured those correct, I'm doing this by eye, but some of you would prefer to use a rule, and just measure 1.5mm off both edges. Taking a knife and cut those off. Once we've cut 1.5mm off each side, we need to get ourselves a little bit more of the jointing connector, just a little longer than the mitre itself, and we need just to cold weld it underneath in that fashion there, put a weight on it, and essentially we repeat the same for all four corners till we've got almost a picture frame around the outside. So just a little bit of cold weld. On one edge, slide that under. What we can do, if we cold weld half of this side here just to help hold it in position, on like that, apply weight to the top to hold it there. So this side is essentially now done, and we just move to the next corner and repeat on the other side. Now we've added the margins to our panel. We've now got almost a hybrid here. The centre has already been caulked, and we've added the margins that now need to be masked and caulked. Now if you're decided from the outset that you wish to have a margin panel, you could actually do the whole thing, all the caulking in one go, rather than caulking the centre, cutting it, and then adding margins. But in this case, for the purpose of the demonstration, we made a plain panel first, and we've sort of converted that into a margin panel. So we've got the centre already caulked, now we have to just caulk the margins around the outside. So it's the same process as before, carefully masking off the outside panel, and using a sharp knife just mask the inside and outside edges all the way round. Once you've masked all around, just go over it a second time before you apply the caulk, just to make sure that all the masking tape is nice and flat, there's no bubbles, there's no kinks, and it is masking off the area that you want to protect. Once you've done that, just take the caulk gun and apply the liquid caulk to fill the channel all the way through, all the way round. Once you've applied the caulk all round, take a little bit of waste plastic, a bit of hardboard, plywood, whatever you've got, and just smooth it along the top of the caulk, applying a little bit of downward pressure, making sure not to wipe the caulk off onto the surface of your panel. Once you've done that, you need to put your panel aside for 24 hours to allow the cork to cure. Once you've allowed your panel to cure for 24 hours, you can then proceed to removing the masking tape. We have a panel here that we did earlier. This one here has been corked in its entirety, so it wasn't made from a completed sheet which was then bordered, but we've done the whole thing in one go. So all this simply remains to do is a removal of the tape. And just as with the plain panel that we did earlier, there just may be a need just to, with your palette knife or your chisel, just trim the top of the cork off to ensure it's nice and flush. It's usually a little higher because of the actual thickness of the masking tape. That raises the height of the cork. But just cut this down all the way around. And then with a brush, brush it all off to take away any shine. Once you've cut off the excess cork using your spatula or your sharpened chisel, giving it a brush with a nice soft brush, you will then have a completed Re-Teak margined panel. I put that to one side and I bring on the one we made earlier in the other video, the welded one. You can see that they are identical. So there are two different methods to achieve the same result: hand corked and hot welded. There is a possibility of a hybrid system where you hot weld the main panel and cork in the margins if you would prefer. That is possible, but it's by no means necessary. You can all cork or all weld. Having worked with both systems and produced panels using both methods, I personally think the hot welded system is the way to go. Although it may seem a little more difficult and more daunting initially, it's a cleaner method and it certainly isn't difficult to do. Just a little bit of confidence and you'll find you'll be able to produce very good quality hot welded panels that can rival some of the biggest brand leaders. On this video demonstration, I have just shown you how to make simple rectangular panels, but obviously the Re-Teak product is not restricted to this. You can make panels of any shape or size. We have a wider 125mm product that will allow you to cut unusual shapes, curves, compound curves, etc. So there's nothing to restrict you except your own ability or possibly courage.